This video covers animal focus, specifically the forester's version of the ability, which functions somewhat differently from what one might expect. Originally, this was part of a Brora video. However, it became an overlong digression, so I decided to separate it into its own piece. We begin with the in-game description of the ability. Unfortunately, it is vague, stating only that it functions like the hunter's a regular animal focus when the animal companion is dead. Luckily, right below, there's an icon with a tooltip that explains said hunter ability in more detail. We can also examine the ability on an actual hunter character. Here I use Windwalk with 1 hunter level. The ability provides several aspects that can be toggled on and off or freely switched between. There's 3 dead ground stat bonuses: Tiger for dexterity, Bull for strength, and Bear for constitution. These bonuses are of the inherent type, which is rare in the base game. Apart from specific class abilities, only stat-boosting manuals share this type. As a result, this buff stacks with almost everything else. They each have 3 tiers, giving +2, +4, and +6 respectively, unlocked at hunter levels 1, 8, and 15. Then there's 3 dead ground skill bonuses: Falcon for perception, Monkey for athletics, and Owl for stealth. These are competence bonuses, which are pretty common, and they also scale across 3 tiers, giving +4, +6, and +8. Mouse grants evasion at level 1 and improved evasion at level 12. Stack grants an enhancement bonus to speed. It's the same type as the usual speed topic spells like Haste, Long Strider, Expeditious Retreat, etc. Meaning it doesn't stack with any of those. It also has 3 tiers. This makes animal focus extremely flexible. For example, while tanking, you can activate Tiger for some extra dexterity, which gives extra armor class. If we want to do damage, we can switch to Bull, providing attack and damage bonuses from the strength. While exploring, Falcon can boost perception for detecting hidden objects or traps. And against an incoming spell with a reflex save, Mouse is useful. More so on a high dexterity companion, like the Leopard, than the Boar. Evasion completely negates damage on a successful reflex save, but failed saves still result in full damage. The second part of the ability description explains what happens when the animal companion is dead. For the forester, this is the default behavior, and we will return to it shortly. The third part is what I, for lack of a better name, will call Animal Focus Plus. This is a swift action that applies the currently selected aspect to the hunter themselves for 1 minute. The number of uses per day equals hunter level, so at level 1 you have 1. Suppose we have Windwalk as a strength melee damage dealer and the Boar as a tank. We can select a Bull as the active aspect, use Animal Focus Plus to grant the Bull aspect to Windwalk, and then switch the active aspect back to Tiger for the Boar. We now are buffing Windwalk with strength for damage and the Boar with dexterity for armor class. Windwalk keeps Bull until a minute passes or Animal Focus Plus is toggled off. If we want to change the aspect on Windwalk, we have to toggle Animal Focus Plus off and on, consuming another use. Since we only have 1 use here, I reset the charges via Toybox for testing. For the forester, the second part of the description applies by default. Animal focus buffs are applied directly to the forester. Straightforward enough, but how does it interact with Animal Focus Plus? At first glance, it seems to double the buff. After switching to another aspect, we end up with both, each providing their regular level 1 bonus. Let's test this with Falcon instead. Normally, Tier 1 Falcon gives a +4 competence buff. Doubling would imply +8. Instead, we receive +6. This matches the level 8 Tier 2 version of the ability. Thus it seems that Animal Focus Plus does not duplicate the effect, but rather increases it by 1 tier. If correct, then applying Animal Focus Plus while mouse is active should grant improved evasion. Let's see. To test this, I brought in Sila with a sorcerer level. With nothing active, Burning Hands deals half damage on a successful reflex save. And full on a failed one. With mouse active, evasion negates damage on a successful save. While on a failed save, the target still takes full damage. With mouse plus Animal Focus Plus. If this function has improved evasion, it should now also half damage on failed saves. And indeed it does. This confirms our theory. Wonderful. Let's level both characters to 8. The Hunter gains a secondary active aspect, and several aspects upgrade to Tier 2. Everything behaves as expected. We can select 2 aspects, and activating Animal Focus Plus applies both to the Hunter. Otherwise, the system works the same as before. The Forester, unlike the Hunter, does not gain a secondary active aspect. For reference, a hunter with a dead animal companion still retains both, but this is not relevant to the following behavior. The same issues still apply. Activating Tiger grants a Tier 2 Tiger buff. Using Animal Focus Plus upgrades it to Tier 3. So far, everything makes sense. Switching the active aspect to Bull, however, produces unexpected results. Instead of having 2 Tier 2 aspects, we end up with Bull Tier 2 and Tiger Tier 1. Odd, as this would mean it diverges from how the ability functions for hunters with animal companions, yet still not entirely unreasonable. So let's do another test. We enable Tiger, upgrade it with Animal Focus Plus to Tier 3, and then we disable Animal Focus Plus. Instead of returning to Tier 2, as we would expect, it drops all the way to Tier 1. This is clearly a bug. Switching to another aspect and back resets the value correctly back to Tier 2. At level 15, enabling Tiger grants us a corresponding Tier 3 buff of +6 dexterity. Animal Focus Plus has no effect, as expected, since we are already at the maximum tier. After switching the active aspect to another, there's still no discernible benefit. Now, the other test. Again, we toggle on both. Then we disable Animal Focus Plus. At this time, it does do something. It completely removes the original buff, even though the aspect is still active. So what the hell is going on? I believe the underlying behavior is actually rather simple. Each time an aspect or Animal Focus Plus is toggled on, the system increments the tier of the target aspect, or more likely a hidden tier value, by the appropriate amount for that level. Toggling it off again decrements by the same amount. The issue arises because this tier value is capped at the maximum tier. For example, let's look at the level 15 case we just saw. Toggling on Tiger increments the value to 3, granting a tier 3 buff. Toggling Animal Focus Plus would raise it to 6, but since the cap is 3, it stays at 3. Toggling Animal Focus Plus off then decrements it by 3, leaving the value at 0, which removes the buff entirely, despite the aspect still being active. The second example corresponds to the first level 8 test we did. Toggling on Tiger increments it to 2. Toggling Animal Focus Plus raises the Tiger aspect's tier to 3. Switching to Bull is equivalent to toggling off Tiger and toggling on Bull. Tiger is decremented by 2, leaving it at 1, and Bull is incremented by 2, putting it at 2. The final example reproduces the same behavior as example 1, but at level 8, and with the switching back and forth to reset values included. As a result of this, past level 15, Animal Focus Plus is a completely dead feature. It does nothing positive. Worse still, from level 8 onwards, toggling it on and then off, or simply letting it expire, actively penalizes the player. The Forester has always been among the weakest of the Hunter subclasses. It gives up the Animal Companion in exchange for features of questionable value, such as concealment and terrain expertise. The flawed implementation of Animal Focus Plus only makes matters worse for it. And, like other hunters, the class is heavily front-loaded. Having yet another feature that is strong at the outset but fades into irrelevance later on further accentuates this. From an outside perspective, the simplest solution would be to simply uncap the tier values. If one only wants the back ironed out, values beyond the cap would simply map back to the maximum. However, if one wants the ability to mean something beyond level 15, then further tiers could be added, or at least one tier for the level 3 Animal Focus Plus. Some final words, and I must admit I have added these partly out of concern that I may have sounded rather whiny in the last couple paragraphs. For all that I said, I do rather like the Forester. It's an interesting, if somewhat gimmicky class, and has a very strong early game. And despite what I said, there's nothing actually wrong with having a class that shines early and falters later on, while another is weak at first but caps high. It actually makes the game more interesting. And as for the bugs, well, in a game of this scope, one simply expects them. This is not the first one. And Owlcat have been rather good about tidying them up, well beyond the release of the game. I didn't make this video to showcase bugs, but simply to show how the ability works. It is bugged though.